You have all this very high level advice when you do startups, typically from Y Combinator, and you listen to these things and you go like, they're a little bit cliche, right? You got to build something that people want and don't raise too much money. But in the end, all these cliches are they're just cliches because they're true, and that's where you end up again, right? Like the most important thing is building something that people want. Like it's terrible advice because it's not so actionable, but it ends up always being the most important thing. But instead of like trying to make that actionable with some process, some magic process or a playbook or something, it's more like a compass.
Welcome to Generation Builders podcast, brought to you by Software. I'm your host, Mariam. The goal of the show is to unpack and share the superpowers and lessons of today's most successful software companies and discuss how the next generation will use and build software without code. I interview world-class product, growth, and community experts who help build some of the best companies of today. Hello, everyone. Hey, Quinn. I'm so excited to have you with us today. I wanted to do a quick intro. Quinn is the founder and CEO of Framer, a platform to build professional websites. Quinn used to work at Facebook as a product designer and previously founded a company called Sofa, a software and design company that was acquired by Facebook. You like to think of yourself as half designer, half programmer, and a little bit of entrepreneur. I'm really keen to learn a bit more about that. Let's start with that.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. Um, Yeah. So you read the website, and that's very old text because like most designers, I don't really update my portfolio that often. Although with current Framer, it's a little bit easier. But then I don't really update the text. I just make nicer graphics. Um, but I do think of myself of I started as a designer, and then I kind of got into programming. So I'm one of these people that I guess really liked design when they grew up, but then found out that they're never going to be the best designer. So kind of looking for other things to do to combine with design to make it special. Just like I guess like every Dutch boy wanted to be a DJ, and then you find out quickly that you're not going to be the best one. I guess it's worse in Berlin, to be honest. And then quickly you're going to find out you're probably never going to be the best one, and then you maybe mix it with some other skills. And for me, that became programming. So I really enjoy programming, and mixing those both ended up becoming a product designer. So really quickly, like prototyping things and like building small products for people. And then those small products would become larger products. And that's kind of how I ended up in startups.
Nice. And how did you come up with the original idea of Sofa? And maybe you can explain a bit what it was doing, and and later also Framer.
Yeah, so I'll try to do it quickly because there's so much history, obviously, in these companies for me. But like the first company that I started wasn't really a company in our mind. It was just a bunch of friends, and we made Mac apps. It was before the iPhone, and we really enjoyed making beautiful apps. And there was just like a few weird companies on the internet that did that got like obsessed with making really good Mac applications. And
When
a
was
few of
that?
them
What was
are,
the year?
yeah, I want to say it's like 2005, 2006,
Okay.
something like
Wow.
that. So you had Panic, which is still around. They're making like FTP clients and an editor, and they've always been sort of like I guess like primo Mac software, and that's still their entire business. And then there were like I want to say like 8 other smaller companies that were also building Mac products at a very, very high quality level. Maybe not technically, although for us, like technically we were pretty good, but it was all about like drawing graphics and icons and the UX. Yeah. And, initially we tried to build some product that we wanted to sell to some big Dutch customer, but that didn't work. And then we had a friend and he was just selling his software online. And we thought, okay, why don't we try that? Because nobody else wants to buy it. And that worked. And now we're suddenly in the software business. So, yeah. And eventually, that company, yeah, grew a little bit because we're making some money off the internet. But it's not like, it's no startup sort of capitalist thing here. It's like a couple of $100 a month for everybody. And we're just getting by with Thai food. But at some point we started, what changed was we started winning a bunch of Apple Design Awards, and we had 2 products, a point of sale product, and a product for Subversion. Subversion was basically a Git alternative, or like whatever came before Git. And we made a visual client on top of that. And then we also made a diffing app, which allowed you, and this was a little bit later, but that app allowed you to show the differences between two files in this versioning app. So kind of like a weird mix of apps. We're also building an e-commerce platform. So we're doing a bunch of stuff. But we started winning an Apple Design Award, or 2 Apple Design Awards in a row for these products. And yeah, then suddenly everybody internationally was looking at our company, maybe in some way that we didn't really understand back then. So all these larger companies in Silicon Valley were all trying to find really good designers. And yeah, this was a really good, let's say, recruiting funnel for them. And they reached out, and eventually we ended up being bought by Facebook in 2011. So that was quite exciting, obviously.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, I can imagine exactly. Like you speak about that as it was nothing. We just sold it to Facebook, but not
Yeah,
every founder is successful in building a startup in the first place, and then also selling to companies like Facebook.
yeah, and there's like a few sides to that. Like if you go through something like that, then when we did it, it wasn't so big because they had a movie, so that was cool, right? They just made a movie, so they meant something, but it wasn't like it was now, right? Like it was definitely not clear that they would be some winner in that category, and now that they are the winner, it's very hard to not talk about the Facebook acquisition because it's like so defining. It's maybe not even the thing that I'm most proud of, but it's obviously definitely the thing that
Yeah.
everybody or kind of like that defined that phase of the company and everything. So yeah, it's interesting how that works.
Amazing. So, how can you explain Framer in 2 words, like to a 5-year-old? How would you explain them? And how did you come up with Framer idea? I know you spent some time in Facebook, and probably as a founder you didn't like that, and then you decided to to start your own company again. Yeah, tell us a bit
Somewhat.
more about that.
Yeah, I can start with Framer first. So Framer is a tool to build professional websites for the internet, and I mean that in the broadest sense, right? So the websites can do a whole lot. Can be marketing websites, can be your small first product, can be your portfolio website for just an individual. But it's just like a way to build really great websites. And the way that it does it is like completely visual, so you can extend things with code, but like you don't have to know any code to build like super elaborate websites with, on one hand, content management system, but on the other hand, like super great visual effects in a way that we've maybe only seen with Flash, or only seen people to be able to make these things super easy with Flash. So like we're hoping to really push sort of what most people can do, or what a lot of people can do for their website really forward, right? So really making it easier for people to ship sort of the best quality websites that they can without having to rely on like huge front end teams or just like super specialists that can only build these websites. And that's really what Framer's about, to kind of like allow everybody to build the best website that they can without becoming basically website engineers.
Amazing. And yeah, so how you started working on that idea from Facebook onwards?
Yeah, so that's a very windy road, I can say so, and I guess that's for all startups, because all startups take a lot of time. Despite what everybody thinks, you only see
Yeah,
it when it gets successful, and that's like the last 2 years
exactly.
of the company or something, when everything is well defined. But the first few years of a startup is typically, you raise a bit of money and you have a few bets, right? And then you have to kind of like get something off the ground. And if it doesn't really work fast enough, or sometimes it works for a while, you have to change directions a little bit. And typically, the way that you start with a startup, I think, is like solving something for yourself, right? An itch. And you try to also latch on to something where you feel something is changing, something big is changing, so that more people will have the same problem as you, right? Kind of this wave that you can ride, if you will. So at Facebook, and this ended up being the wrong idea, but it was still a pretty good idea at first. So at Facebook, what we saw as product designers is that we saw that like design tools were getting more high fidelity. So we saw a lot of like very advanced designers at Facebook trying to express a more high fidelity website or more high fidelity products. So with friction and physics in there, things that you couldn't really design in Photoshop or design tools. So we thought, okay, where the future is going to be for design tools is that people are just going to request more and more higher fidelity tools and ask for that. And that worked very well for a little bit. But actually, you saw sort of the market change a little bit over time, where I think now, if you're super honest about it, a lot of people that design product, they're more working in wireframing tools, which is way lower fidelity than where we started out. And we felt that too with Framer. So I think that prototyping, where we kind of started, sort of like high fidelity design, was really good. But it was getting smaller over time. So it's getting more specialized. And whether you like that or not, because I really like sort of high fidelity design, that's one thing. It was happening. And the other thing that we saw is that there was one sort of area, like quite a large area, where people were trying to make more high fidelity stuff, but not really becoming experts for it. And that was web design. So half of the stuff that people were designing in Framer were websites, and they were just asking us like, "Yeah, why do I have to rebuild it when I'm ready? Like, can we just ship it?" And yeah, that's something that we, like we saw, like, it's kind of like, it's shameful to say we saw for 2 years and didn't really do anything with it. But at some point we were just like, let's help these people just ship the sites that they design in Framer and ship them directly to the web. Why rebuild it? And then put all our technology and all our expertise behind making that also like super optimized, high quality websites, right? Like great for performance, great for SEO, but also amazing visual effects because we're really good at animation and everything. So it's kind of where we thought, okay, we discovered this sort of like this niche, or we started with something that became more niche, but within that niche, we found something really big. We zoomed in on that. And now, yeah, I'm happy to say that like that part is really exploding again. So yeah, we see more and more companies now adopting Framer to build their marketing websites, but also like lots of individuals just building portfolio pages and landing jobs and agencies adopting it. So it's super cool.
Yeah, amazing. And I love that you followed what your customers essentially were trying to solve with your tool, right? They were trying to solve also a different problem and they had different need, and you kind of understood that and then built what they needed and basically
Yeah,
you
it's not
helped them
always easy
solve
to
that.
see, but it's always like in the end when it works, like looking back, it's always easy to say, yeah, they were kind of
Yeah.
like leading us that way, but it's not always obvious when you're in the middle of it.
Yeah. And when building a company from scratch, you have done it 2 times now. What do you think, if there's any order at all, which is funny if you ask a founder, especially in the middle of building a company? It's probably a very hard question to answer, but in general, is there some things that come first that are important to do first, like creating the product, building a team, raising a capital, or something else that you have experienced that is probably going to help you be more successful in comparison to other ways of doing it?
Um, yeah, there's not a really great one size fits all answer for this, but
Playbook,
like
right? There's playbook to build a successful startup.
no, yeah, then everybody would have one, right? Like, to be honest, it's just really, really hard to get it all right. Because even if you talk to the folks that done it before and they have one, then they'll give you a bunch of lessons that you can't really apply. It's just like how to get rich or something, right? Like, maybe there's some playbook, but it never works. And same is true for a startup. I think with startups, it's interesting, just like with getting rich quick things, is that everybody seems to know how it's done. But then in reality, it's like much harder than they all make it sound to be. But I think, like I think an honest thing about it is that you have all this very high level advice when you do startups, typically from Y Combinator, and you listen to these things and you go like, they're a little bit cliche, right? You got to build something that people want and don't raise too much money. But in the end, all these cliches they're just cliches because they're true. And that's where you end up again, right? Like the most important thing is building something that people want. Like it's terrible advice because it's not so actionable, but it ends up always being the most important thing. But instead of like trying to make that actionable with some process, some magic process or a playbook or something, it's more like a compass, right? Like if you go through building a startup, there's so much things that get you distracted. And the only thing that really matters is making something that people want. And that's such a big or strong effect, is that if you don't have something that people want, or product market fit, or any of these technical terms, then nothing seems to work in your startup. And everybody will start pointing at each other and be kind of pissed. And yeah, the whole thing will just like feel like an enormous grind. And if you have something that works, if you have a product that works, everything around it will also seem to work. And
Mm-hmm.
and that is sort of the thing that you don't really get from that cliche in the beginning. Um, you only get that once you go through it, right? Um, and that is a big thing. So sort of like embrace the cliches. Don't try to turn them into playbooks, but really use them as a compass, right? Like no distractions. Just focus on making something that people really want.
Yeah, and that's also bringing back to being really close to your customers and understanding the problems. We'll get to that, but before that, because you mentioned about product market fit, we'd love to understand what is the point where you actually knew. It's such a cliche again, but what is the point, if there was such a point, where you knew that you have true product market fit?
Yeah. Well, first of all, we've had it a few times. That is weird, right? Because like product market fit always seems like people make it out like it's a binary thing, but it's just if you look at a successful founder, or typically the founders are typically a bit more honest unless they're like in fundraising mode. But if you look at the venture capitalist that posts the revenue graph after a startup got acquired or something, then it's that perfect curve, right? Like it goes like it's a smooth sort of half elliptical curve, like some acceleration curve. Now, some companies have that, but it never really is that. It's mostly like pieces of duct tape molded into that curve, right? Like hack after hack, until you kind of build something that looks like it. And I think, like every piece of duct tape in there is like a little bit of product market fit and then losing it, right? Like I have product market fit for like 100 friends. That's kind of how you start a company. And then you're gonna ask the first outsider for money, and then yeah, you gotta reinvent that part a little bit because they don't really care for you as much. So the rubber hits the road. The product has to be really good and really valuable. So yeah, now you got to get to 1,000 people, and then sometimes you go from 1,000 to 10,000 people, and boom, like everything gets stuck again, right? And you have to go through another year or something solving that. You end up somewhere else, and hopefully you get it again. So I think the most important thing, or the most the thing that I typically hear that I don't really agree with it is that it's a binary moment, maybe later on, hopefully for us now, right? And in the beginning, we've had product market fit very well with like probably like 2 times before where it was going really smooth for a while. And then always kind of like you hit some roadblock and you have to
Mm-hmm.
reinvent yourself. And the moment that you have it, well, I think there's many telltales to will or uh, that will show you that you have it. But the most typical one is that you can't keep up with Twitter that's talking about your product. That'd be a very good one. Or you can't keep up with this support mail anymore. Or your payment system is breaking, right? Because like you're hitting some limits or something. Or your servers start to crash like one after the other. Any of these things is like pure product market fit. It has to be
You have
over a bit of sustained amount of time, right? Like for one night, it's different. But yeah, if it just, if it's week after week. And then yeah, and if you have it for a while, you'll just see that everything starts to work in the company, right? Everybody's just high fiving each other. Like, yeah, because like if it starts growing, then it lifts everything
Yep.
in the company. So
Mm.
all projects, all initiatives that you will do start to work. Whereas like if you don't have it, then nothing seems to work. So it's a very different feeling.
Yeah, I like your honest kind of explanation and the way you kind of really have gone through it and just explaining it the way it is because you're right. From outside, when you hear lots of successful stories, right? Typically, it feels like there's a product market fit at one point, and then from there everything went smoothly, everything is growing, etc. But in reality, that's never the case. Especially, I think for more horizontal type products like Framer, where you have so many different types of customers, so many different types of use cases. That's one of the hardest, where you actually are finding product market fit within specific groups, even of groups of customers within specific use cases, right? And that's all evolution. You have to keep reinventing yourself and the product and iterate over all of these different use cases and really figure out what is that next thing. Yeah,
For
I
sure.
feel like we are going through that also at software, which is exactly the same case. You find product market fit within a specific group, within a specific use case, then you have to grow from there. You have to keep expanding and growing and finding other use cases, and yeah, that's totally the case. Cool. So, kind of just to wrap up about your founding story, would love to understand what is the thing that you wish you knew before, like something that you know now that you wish you had known before.
Well, I think what every founder wants to know is like how long you try something before you change or give up. And you got like typically you raise enough money to change things like 3 times. Well, depending on the amount of time that you take to figure out whether something is working or not, right? But I think most of the conversations that I have with founders, they're like, yeah, we launched this thing 6 months ago. Nobody's showing up. We give it another 6 months, right? Like, is it the product, or is it just like, haven't we told anybody about it, or like not the right people about it, or what do we do? And what's the moment where you say, okay, we're going to completely change this thing, or completely change the company or something like that? So I think maybe you were hoping for more like of a rule, or like a global rule. But I think like if I wanted to ask for a superpower, it's like, like, is there like some hint from above that says, okay, this thing isn't going to work, you should probably change it? Because like it always feels like you're waiting a little bit too long with it. But then, yeah, I also know some founders that change their stuff every 3 months,
Yeah.
right? Like if it hasn't worked for 3 months, they just change it up, and that's probably a little bit too fast. So you don't really, very hard to pick that moment.
Yeah, totally. That's definitely something we have. You always go through that, and I think from my perspective as a founder as well, what I have seen is really just being close to your customers and being very laser focused on the people that you should be optimizing for, at least for the time being, and then making decisions based on that. Probably there's never going to be a one answer for sure. I can never expect any founder say that, but there's sometimes some things that you kind of over this iteration you learn, and then maybe next time you do better, and already know, okay, how long should I wait, or how long do I keep going before I start doing something else.
How do you do it? Do you do it from the gut, or do you measure it? Try to measure it, like when
Both,
things
but
are
there's
working or
there's
not.
definitely a lot of intuition and a lot of instinct involved in that, and a lot of um customer being close to customers, just understanding the needs, and then seeing if something works or doesn't. Really both. I wouldn't say it's one or the other. We have to look at data. Yes, we have to make decisions based on understanding the data, but it's never going to be enough.
Yeah.
So when you started building Framer, so in the beginning, I mean, as you said, like in the very early stages, especially, it's the hardest part, going from 0 to 1. So what were the biggest challenges? Was it like the first prototyping product that you had? Was it actually kind of easier to build, and then there was a traction from early on, or did you have to go through challenges to figure this out and then transitioning to the next kind of use case?
I think that one thing that we did very well, apart from the specific thing that we picked, but we picked like a really good wedge, right? So we wanted to see if we can build like a design tool. The goal was always to build a design tool that would be used by a lot of people, and and actually that's also something that we very deliberately picked, because if you quit a large company or a large successful company, then the whole world looks like that problem. So what I mean is that if you quit Facebook, you're going to start a messages or a photos company, because basically that was like the main two products of Facebook. So you're going to build a company like that, and you will have 1 million users in 30 days, because it looked also easy. But and I guess now the whole world looks like UI or AI, and then before the whole world looked like some crypto problem. And so you tend to, especially if you surround yourself right, you get a bit infected with that. But what then after a while you have to, that you kind of settle down. You have to pick um, a problem that you're really going to focus on for a while and make successful. And then the thing that we ended up picking was a problem that we would really enjoy working on for a long time.
Hmm.
because that is a weapon that not a lot of founders have. Typically, you kind of like either, I see a lot of founders that just like, maybe
Have a
especially in Germany,
problem, they'll
right?
just pick a problem in the
Yeah,
market
like
and try to
a
solve.
nice German joke in between, but they calculate their problem almost. They go like,
Hmm.
well, total addressable market is this the opportunity. We can put it together like that, and this will, we can take out a whole bunch of red flags, and this has actually
Yeah.
like a really good good chance on succeeding. Or sometimes you pick it on hype, right? I think in Silicon Valley, it's
Hmm.
much more around
Hmm.
hype, so they don't calculate it. They go like, what can I sell to an investor? And so there's other tactics to pick it, but I think if you pick the tactic to pick a problem that you like working on, then you're not going to give up as easily as others. And I think for us, that's a huge advantage. And then this specific problem, like design tools, other than us really like having experience with it and all that, the cool part about design tools is that you can see what other people make with it. And that is very fulfilling. So I've always really enjoyed just looking at the work that's being produced with the tool that you make. I would have had that less with, let's say, making Excel, although Excel is kind of cool in its own way, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, I've never heard anyone say Excel is cool, but maybe. So yeah, and that sounds very very familiar. And I think for founders, especially as you're saying, when you reach a point where there is challenges and some things still not work, and your team isn't going as you would like them to be, or excited as you would like them to be excited, the thing that really keeps the founder going is really them, first of all, enjoying and wanting to continue building that thing, right? So if it was just for the market, just for, I'm going to make this amount of money, now it doesn't work, okay, let's switch to something else, then that's really hard. So I think that comes back to the term like people call product, founder market fit, founder product fit rather,
Yeah,
where you
some
really,
fit.
yeah, you really are believing in, and it's just like there is this intrinsic motivation which keeps you going as a founder, because you
Yeah.
just want to really build out something that you believe in, for the future. Maybe it's not exactly the same thing you have now, but you really want to keep
Yeah, I
working
mean,
on
like
that
the other goal was also to build a very successful company. So like we would give up if we
as a
wouldn't
result.
have, yeah, made it. But like, you have to, like it's going to take at least 5 years or maybe even 10 years. So then having a problem that you, like, if it's not
Yeah,
going so well before it's going well, you can wake up and go like, I love working on tools. Then you have a better day. Then yeah, you have to show up for some product that you don't really like. And then also everything around it is hard, right? Like, people are asking questions, investors aren't calling back because you're like, yeah, being written off a little bit because you know how it feels in between these sort of like pieces of product market fit. Like it's really weird for a founder that like one day you can feel like yeah, you're on top of the world, right? And everybody's and this is typically because like then people are giving you money, but also venture capitalists, like their whole business is then to sell you their money. So they're all going to say how amazing you are. And it has some effect. Even after a couple of time, I still, like I still feel a little bit better than normal. But then after it's done and you got to bring the results and it's not going like the way that you were hoping for, you feel pretty depressed sometimes. You have to carry everything on your back and you have to stay very positive. And then these things really help, right? If you have something that you can really
yeah,
look forward working on and focus on, and yeah, then you just have a bigger
absolutely.
chance of making it.
Yeah, absolutely. So regarding the product, when you started building early on, so it's a very product-led kind of growth, I would assume you have had early on, and probably also, so you have a free version, freemium version that you offer on the product. I would love to
Yeah.
understand early on in terms of attracting users and the right customers. Has this been all through kind of word of mouth, to organic channels, etc.? How can you maybe share a bit more there? How you have attracted your first 1,000 customers or 100 customers even to start with?
Can I ask for your best definition of product-led growth? But it is because it's such a sort of like a business SaaS topic or something, but it just means like you don't need salespeople, you need very, very little marketing, right?
Well, to me, product-led growth really is something where you are. So the growth of your the traction and the growth is really driven by product mostly, by either people really finding and then sharing also with others, building and getting excited. So really through word of mouth, through organic channels, finding through search. Um,
Yeah. So then for us, that part we completely have, but sometimes there's like super elaborate PLG things that I can hardly follow. So I always make sure that we're talking about the same thing. But yeah, word of mouth. I think like for us, it's like word of mouth. And if you're lucky enough to build some viral loop, obviously
Mm-hmm.
you can also have product-led growth, but it's harder in productivity tools like ours. There's like maybe some loop that you can create where people make something and then for free, and it has a banner on there, and the banner pulls new people in if it gets shared enough. But yeah, that's not a viral loop like Facebook had, where like one person invites 10 others, right? Like that's a very different effect. It's more like 1,000 people build something and then maybe they bring in 10 new users or something. So it's not like this sort of like exponentially growing thing. So it's all word of mouth. So they just have to be very happy with what they build and talk to others about it. And yeah, and then I think you have to make a choice in the beginning, or like maybe not entirely the beginning. And entirely the beginning, it's all like word of mouth, right? But after that, you kind of have to figure out, are you going to become a company that's just going to rely on, people recommending it to other people, or are we going to buy ads basically and have like some outbound sales force that's going to tell the world about it, uh, stuff like that. And we're definitely actively not that. So
Mm-hmm.
we don't do paid ads, maybe like a little bit so that we're on the top with the search result, which is, I find, almost extortion, but you kind of have to do it. But other than that, we don't do it. So we really rely on the community, the product,
Mm-hmm.
sort of the cool things that we can do around Framer to bring in new users, and then on the product to really activate these users, come around, recommend it to their friends, and then basically sell itself until they hit some thresholds, where they then bring in their entire company, and now we can kind of make a business deal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's at the core of, to me, at the core of any product-led growth, really, where your product is so good that people are using it and they intrinsically are motivated to share it with others, their colleagues or their friends. Um, and I know Framer is really, really um, focused on making the best design, the best designed and UX app. So UX and design is really important for you and the company. Maybe you can just touch base a bit on that as well. How are you thinking about design in the product, and how much effort goes into actually perfecting the building experience, the UX and all of that, versus maybe shipping things fast in the MVP approach. We'll get to that. I have another question on that, but really just how much effort you put into perfecting things before launching them.
Yeah, yeah, we have a pretty high bar, and I can actually. It's funny because I get a lot of people that ask us like how to also get that high bar, right?
Mhm.
People look at sort of the product and the way that we finish it, but also the website and everything that we do, and they go like, yeah, that's kind of how we want to build our brand. Um, but typically, I end up advising people to not do it because you need a lot of, yeah, you need like 3 or 4 designers that really, really care about that on board, and you can't just like hire them and start with that tomorrow.
Mhm.
And then also, I can't really prove how much that really works. It's more like a branding thing, right? Like people think of Framer as something that's fairly polished. And I think for designers that makes sense, but there's no way for me to really prove that. I just know that like that's the thing that we have and we can really lean into it. And it's something that I really like for our brand. And my co-founder even more, he's like the most visual designer of our two. So he's not gonna let anything ship without it
Mhm.
looking fairly excellent. On the other hand, we have been getting a lot more practical about these things, right? So shipping fast is definitely the number one goal always. It has to look good and it has to work well, right? Looking good doesn't always mean that it works well. So look good, work well, and then ship fast.
Mhm. So it really comes back to also, to bigger extents, to founders really caring about the design, the UX experience, and really setting the bar high of what goes out to customers and what is the state we want to launch with, and then iterate on. And
Yeah, but it
that
is
brings
really,
me. Hmm?
yeah, sorry, but it is really a
Sorry.
branding thing, right? Like you've seen excellent product, like have great liftoff with terrible visual design, really great UX design, but
Hmm.
terrible visual design, and that can work pretty well. So you should only consider going after, let's say, a framer type of quality app or a linear type of quality app. And there's a bunch of these other products that, hopefully stand out a little bit from the others. Like if you have a group of folks that start the company that really care for it and can execute on that, and then you make it your thing. But if you're going to shop around to make it that your thing,
Mm-hmm.
then you
Yeah,
better find your own
makes
thing and
sense.
lean in on that.
That makes sense. Yeah, totally. And so you mentioned about speed. So how important is speed of execution at Framer? And how do you go about this dilemma of, shipping fast and testing out things, iterating on those that might not be perfect, or perfecting out and then launching something when it's completely ready? Yeah, how important is that, and how do you actually manage to make incentivize people or push people to be faster?
Yeah, it's super important, but it's very, very hard to measure how fast you're shipping, right? Like nobody can really. You can go to our updates page and go like, oh, that seems a
Mm-hmm.
lot for the amount of people. But yeah, every update, yeah, it can be a few days of work or a few weeks of work. You really don't know. So like, honestly, if I talk to our CTO or like our VP engineering, then I typically go, okay, your job is to say, are we going fast enough? Is the quality high enough? And they're always like, yeah, okay, but like, how do I figure that out? And yeah, but that is the job, right? This is what we need to answer.
Mm-hmm.
Like the trade-off is quality versus speed. And is that trade-off the right one? And what kind of signals do we have for that? And obviously, if everything starts crashing, all your customers are pissed off, then yeah, the quality has to go up, right? And then you can take away a little bit of speed. But the the main killer, or the main, I want to say, enemy of product market fit or finding product market fit in time is speed. So in the beginning, speed is much more important. And as your company grows a little bit bigger, and I don't mean up to hundreds, but even with 50 people already, people can get a little bit more isolated and say, well, yeah, we shouldn't go too fast because we should do this the right way. And that's pretty tough still in the beginning of a company, because it always feels a founder that you're getting characterized as the person that wants to go too fast, right? They go like, yeah, there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of technical debt. We should fix that first. And it's very hard to argue from the other side that if you don't get quickly enough to product market fit, which really requires speed, that the company might cease to exist, or that, nobody's going to get like that nice extra payday at the end of the year, or all the other things that people are trying to get out of a company that the company exists for, basically. And yeah, and the bigger that they get, the more isolated that people can get from really realizing that speed is the one thing that you need to have to get the product market fit or stay on the ball, win from a competitor.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that, because in the end, what comes down to startup being successful is really being fast enough, and also in comparison to bigger companies who are potentially doing similar things, and then really finding that angle where they have built something people really want. And in order for that to figure out and to really hit kind of the product market with, you have to iterate fast. And perfecting and having a perfect product is great, but we also know there's like tons of perfect products that have been created but they have died, unfortunately. And there's also tons of companies that have bad design, at least if you say bad UX type products, which are really really successful companies, right? So in the end, I guess what defines success is very specific to the company, but at the end, to reach product market with, you want to have a state build into a point where customers really use and get the value, especially at the early stages. You want them to use the product, get the value, and then you can always come back, iterate, and improve it as you go.
Can I do an exercise with you and try to quantify speed?
Sure.
It's like we could start on the easy side, right? Like, so Google ships. If I ask colleagues at Google, like, what's the average time to ship something, they go like 2 or 3 years. And typically the tenure at Google is 1.5, so they're not even there anymore, or they're shipping something that they haven't made. Like that's very typical at a company like Google. So yeah, that's a huge problem. And then at Facebook, when I left, when there were still, let's say, 5,000, 6,000 people, they were very proud that they could ship something in 6 months, like with a team, sort of six
Okay.
month cycle. And you're laughing, but we were so proud that we could do that because we were comparing ourselves back then to Google. So then, like, we go smaller, right? So like a company of let's say 500 people, like what should be like how fast should you be able to ship a project? Like 3 months, maybe something like that.
Well, work. I mean, if you ask me, so working. Yeah, I have worked in bigger companies, like that size companies, and I think it always comes back to the mentality and the way you have set up your teams for success. You might have one big, monolithic application where it's extremely difficult for the teams to be agile and to launch things fast. Or if it has the right architecture, has the right setup and the right team structure, etc., it can also be pretty independently launching and shipping things in week time, right? I think it comes back to the mentality and the culture within the company and how the teams have been built. So yeah, it's really difficult. I think it might I can tell, I can say what we consider fast shipping, and
But
we
your
can get.
AI features that you shipped in software, like from inception to shipping, like is that weeks? Is that months?
This was actually a Christmas gift by two, three people organized internally. Not everyone, didn't knew it's actually going to come out. Many people didn't know internally. It was just some people grouped together within a week or 2 weeks. They brought it live.
That's amazing. I want to say that like if you can ship things, like if you're early stage and you can ship things to customers in 2 weeks that are fairly high quality, you're like best in class, right? I think typically the companies that I see around us that they're like 50 to 100 people or something, they try to ship something in 4 to 6 weeks, and then they typically go 2 weeks over,
Yeah.
right? And then
Hmm.
and obviously if they take twice the amount of time, we have a problem. But yeah, it's software, so you can't exactly plan. But like anywhere between, like if you can get something between 4 and 8 weeks out, like for a project that you can use for a bit of marketing and put on the updates page, it's pretty good. If things really start slipping outside of these, yeah, then I think you have a problem.
Yeah, also depends on how many teams you have to sync and how many teams are dependent on doing things in parallel once something launches. So what's the cadence in Framer? If the cadence of releases, like regular updates and the releases even for smaller updates, right?
Yeah, we keep it simple. I mean, we've had so many conversations about why it should be 4 or 6 weeks or something like that. We end up with a month. So like our cadences are a month.
Okay. Okay.
And then if I'm super honest, then I think we plan about 5 weeks of work in a month. So we always go over a little bit. So sometimes we kind of like, skip a cycle to catch up with a specific team and
Hmm.
then we go through, but we try to stay pretty strict about it. Um, yeah, and then again, you can't really compare one team to the other, but I think overall, because we have like three product teams, we have a pretty good sense like which teams are doing a little bit better than others,
Hmm.
and that really varies throughout the quarters, right? But I think the volume of the output is high enough to get a little bit of a sense like which team is doing well, which team's on fire, and which team needs a little bit of help.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, we're it really depends on the company, and also I think the size of the company and how quickly you can operate with all of the other teams. And also, of course, lots of automation, right? I mean, we have nowadays all of the no-code tools, and like one example is when we have some new rollout, we have a big Airtable base where our website, like what's new release page, for example, or the templates, everything is running from Airtable. So it's as simple as just adding that update into the release notes, and then it just shows up on the website. So there's also lots of these nuances in terms of like automations you can make, and to make the kind of playbooks for the teams to be more productive and not to have to do manual work every time. So it kind of just ships quickly. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a lot of the product marketing that we actually, that's job of the product designers as well. So you see a lot of like YouTube movies that are
Yeah.
sort of tutorials, but they're almost marketing movies. And we consider that
Mm,
part of shipping, right?
mm,
Because the team
mm.
also gets very proud if you include that. They can point at their work somewhere at YouTube and it looks amazing. And there's nice little voiceover and we share the hell out of it on Twitter. So it's really nice.
Now, moving a bit into kind of, we spoke about fast moving team, execution is key. How do you build kind of that mindset into the team, and who do you hire for, what kinds of characteristics and skill sets are you looking for when hiring people to have the right culture and that right mindset? Because I think a lot, like, startups are totally different from bigger companies, and lots of people who are successful in bigger companies, they might not and probably will not be successful in startups. There is completely different expectations and, yeah, ways the companies are run, executed. So maybe you could just share what's your kind of playbook or guidance for early stage founders.
Yeah, here I have a bit of a maybe like an opinion that's different than a lot of folks, but I learned over time that my first impressions of people are not so great, but they still really are like, like they have a big effect on me, but I try to be aware of them because typically 50% of my first impressions after a while I have to correct for, right? I still get them. Mm, but if you know that like you only have like a good 3 hours with somebody to see if they're going to be great employees, and my first impression is probably the biggest influence on that, and it's off 50% of the time, then yeah, I'll do my very, very best in those 3 hours to pick really great people. But I think what happens after that is more important for us. So what
Mm-hmm.
you'll see at Framers that a lot of people have been there for like 3, 4, 5 years. So one of the things that I'm really trying to focus on is a softer way of saying it is like that people can really do career development and blah blah. But it actually comes down to a much more um, uh, distinct thing, which is a startup changes your skill and sort of like your responsibilities really quickly. Sometimes in ways that's really cool. You can plan it for your career, and sometimes you got to do some shit work around the work that you want to be doing, and then you discover that you like something else, right? So you're going to be pushed
Mm-hmm.
around into all these directions, and a good startup will help you really develop a bunch of skills, discover a bunch of new skills very quickly in a super messy way, right? Like not planned or anything, but you're going to run into all these things. Now, I think that a really great company can, how do I put this right? But this first impression isn't just for the people that interviewed you, it's for the entire company looking at you when you came in. But you quickly become a different person throughout that company, different skills, different
Mm-hmm.
responsibility. And if the company doesn't adjust its perception quickly enough based on your newly acquired skills, you're going to walk away because that's much too close to a family, right? Like your family is going to have a bunch of views around you that you can never change. But a company, and especially a startup, a good company can adjust sort of the perception that they have from you and your skills so that they know that you're like that you're really improving over time. And I think if you can build that, then people will stay around for a long time, and then people can get so good that you can build the best team. And that's much so I don't really believe in that 3 hours that there's special tricks to pick the right winners
Mm-hmm.
together to put it together. No, you have to take a little bit more of a long-term mindset, and that's very dependent on that the perception of how people see you in the company can change with how much better you are becoming. And if that's broken, you'll leave. If that's great, then you can all celebrate it and you'll stay.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I love the way you put it. It's basically the people, types of people who are really who can grow with the company as the company grows, right? And they can acquire a bunch of skill sets as they do different types of jobs because that's the nature of startups. And you're gonna have to be in different topics, in different types of work, and so growth mindset, could you say that growth mindset is something that's really key, and also being potentially entrepreneurial, right? Being open to learning, being open to all of these new different things. Because one thing I have noticed is definitely there is a group of people as well that just don't like to be changing what they're doing, or they have some skill sets, they have some specific expertise, and they want to stay within that. So those are not they might be very successful in other companies, but in startups that's not what is going to make them and the company successful, right?
Yeah, and it's also a bit of a fallacy because, like, I think everybody that's honest about what they like in life has been running into that in some unexpected ways, right? So, like, a company pushing you around a little bit into exploring new things, even maybe sometimes against what you were planning for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
can have great effects. I think the best effect that we had internally is that every time we tried to hire a sales team and then maybe that not working out, we had to ask somebody internally to take over sales, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
And they
people are always
became
like,
the best salesperson probably, right?
yeah, it's like initially they were always kind of reluctant to do it, and then after a while they're like, "This is fun. Like I really enjoy this. I learned so much, right? Like it's not as hard or sort of like macho as it can sometimes see, or like all these sort of prejudices around it. Like it's not true, but like you throw them in the deep, and they end up at the other side, and then really liking something that they
Yeah.
thought they wouldn't like because it's just a perception of other people that they had on that specific area. So
Yeah.
I kind of like moving people around and pushing them a little bit into things that they don't relax because it works. Like it works surprisingly often. It works itself out in ways that are very good for both.
Yeah. Totally agree. Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And we'd love to quickly also spend a bit of time on covering two words about community, because Framer being very, very community oriented. If you can share with us how you have kind of created and nurtured the community around Framer, because I know there is quite passionate community and also very, very knowledgeable and helping community. How you have started and how you have nurtured it, and then how much does that play a role in framers' education and growth in general?
Yeah, again, not really magic tricks here. So I think we're also at our like fourth version of the community, or I mean, called like the first one started on Facebook because yeah, we quit Facebook and then we had a Facebook group and it just blew up and it worked very well because people would see the messages also in their news feeds. But that was back when people were using Facebook and or at least the people that use Framer. So yeah, that kind of like died off a little bit. And then we did a few attempts on like other communities, and the one that we ended up settling on was Discord, which was really nice in the beginning of like sort of launching this sort of like the website version of Framer. It was really good for people to just jump on there and get live help. And that was mostly what they wanted. They were getting stuck. They found a bug. Yeah, and then the trick is that there's no trick. Like all the people in the company will have to just be on that channel and respond to customers and be nice and help them and make friends and build relations, and then you can kind of like build the community. And then now we're going into sort of like a new community again. So we're moving a bit from Discord. We're keeping Discord for the live help, but we're building something more that is more than just chat. And that also is a place where people can kind of contribute in the form of courses, templates, maybe offer paid help to people, maybe some job board and stuff like that. So we just launched it last week, actually. And that's going very well. But again, we're trying internally in the company to explain everybody like, yeah, this is not us asking if you want to come out and help in the community. This is like existential to the company, right?
Mm-hmm.
First, product needs to be good. The second thing is we got to figure out pricing and sales, right? So that we can extract a bit of revenue out of that. And then now the community is the thing that's going to drive activation and sign up. So this is the third thing that we really need to figure out for the company. And it really requires the folks in the company to build that community because nobody else is going to do it. You can't really hire somebody to run your community and expect great results. You'll have you'll have a community that you'll see for every product, right? Like pretty empty, kind of still, like looks like all the other communities. But if you want to have something truly great, yeah, just the founders have to hang on there, like early employees have to hang on, and then the engineers have to jump in if there's like some issue. And it's just not really optional. So, but that's the only way to build a great community, I think. If you can settle for like, some community, which is basically like a forum with a few posts a week and not too much interesting stuff happening, then you can outsource it.
Yeah, yeah. And is that would you say it's a requirement for any newcomer, any new onboarded person, or anyone in the company to spend some dedicated time in their work day or work week in the community?
Yeah, we're definitely, well, let's put it like this, right? Like, I'm not going to say, well, I've sometimes threatened in the company, we're going to make it part of the review, but these things also, it's like a kind of a false threat, right? Because it will get so much discussion going on. But honestly, what is happening, if I'm super honest about it, is that everybody in the company wants to make product decisions, right? From the commercial side to operations to like, they all have an opinion about the product and they want to drive sort of the direction for the product because like that's the biggest sort of strategic driver in the company that you can contribute to. Now we make the shots, the founders in the end, right? So who do we listen to? We listen to the people that listen to the customers. And the people that listen to the customers hang in the community. So if I know that one of my employees has a very big mouth about, the product direction or like, but I know that they're not spending a lot of time with our users in the community, I tend to listen less to them. Or if we elect somebody from the company to go, to go into the management with us or to go into management with us, yeah, we also pick the people that are the closest to our users. That's very easy. So I try to explain that always a little bit. my typical explanation goes a little bit like the largest team is engineering, right? And all the engineering teams end up in companies always end up being ticket punchers. Not nice to say, but I think every engineer knows how that feels, right? You get a ticket assigned, you have no control over, how it's being implemented. It's just like some PM has like spec'd it out and you have to just like basically build it. As an engineer, you want to have influence in the product, right? It's like the fun part of
Absolutely.
the job. Yeah. So what I'm always like sort of arguing internally is like if we don't figure out for the engineers to get also close to the customers, then they cannot drive product and we will have like a ticket punching engineering org, which we don't want. Like I want to avoid it at all costs because it won't allow us to attract the best engineers because they don't really enjoy that, right? So for us, what I'm really telling our engineering group is like hang out in the community, talk to the users, because then we can avoid that whole situations. And engineering can actually drive the product, see what tickets they built first, right? Prioritize and all these things, which is a way better situation for everybody.
Yeah.
But it does require for that group to hang out in the community a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I like how kind of inherent this is in the company and how much this is more coming organically from the team and them wanting to make an impact on the product. And then, of course, those who really care about the product and customers, they will be hanging out as a result
Yeah, but
to be able to make an
maybe I make
impact.
it sound like this is happening and we figured it out, but we don't. It's very, very hard to get folks from Framer, like even internal folks, to even with all these speeches, it's very hard still to get them incentivized to hang out in the community. We're lucky enough that 25% of the company is doing that, and that's why it's going great. But honestly, I need another 25% at least to help because it would just like make everything faster. So if anybody's listening from within Framer, told you many times before, but now you hear it on a podcast. So go do it.
Yeah, no, this is official. It's part of your job.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Just one last question regarding the no code, because I think no code has become kind of the trend and the word in the last 2 years that is kind of being thrown away everywhere, and every product adds no code at the end of their description. But what you have built also, and we are in the same space, is truly kind of no code, building visual web applications and web designs and software visually without code. So what do you think is like, where does the world, what does the world look like in 5 years for the no code ecosystem, no code in general, and where do you see all of these tools going?
Um, I like isn't no code a little bit of a like a theme or also like quite undefined? It's just like a mix of marketing and I think like it's more like if you ask me like how does it look in 5 years, then my answer would be if specifically I think for software, for example, right? There's like 30 million engineers in the world. There's a whole bunch of software that needs to be created for billions of people. It would be great if we can go from 30 million to 100 million and that not everybody has to study computer science. That'd be great. And then maybe they can hack around a bit with scripting. I really like programming, right? So I wouldn't be opposed to people hacking some stuff. And honestly, it's also a bit of an like the binary vision on this is maybe a little bit for people of my age. Like I'm 40, and like when I grew up, you were coding or you weren't. But if you talk to a bunch of kids now, they're just like, yeah, I can do some JavaScript. It's easy, right? Like I just copy and paste until it works, and then I'll do the rest in the visual editor. I'll just I'm building my brand here, so whatever goes, right? I can also video edit, and I can do like AI a little bit with this other tool. So I think it's more about like just enabling larger groups of people to get, the results that they want. And if we call it no code or code, or I think it's just more about, the enablement of that group. And that group needs to do more, right? Like if everybody's building either their brand or trying to make money online, that group now has to do 20 different things. So they just don't have the time to become an expert in everything. And the tools can really up level that, right? So if they can accomplish like 80% of what a programmer would do without having to learn, in-depth Node.js, JavaScript stuff, then that's great. If they can build their own, company website without having to hire an external agency or, run a front end engineering team, it's great. So all these things will go super quickly. And then the world will end up with like, different ratios of builders um, versus the people that actually use the stuff, hopefully.
Yeah, totally agree. And I love you mentioning about the kids now kind of using these tools already. The other day, I was just talking to a kid. He called himself a kid. He's still in school, and he's like, "I'm obsessed with software. I love it. I want to do more to bring software to all of the other kids because." Like essentially, he's building an entire kind of startup on his own for all of the other kids, and it's just
And most
amazing to
kids are,
see.
right? With they're
Yeah,
just
and
building
exactly,
brands for themselves with like more tools than I know of. So
exactly.
it's quite impressive. Or they're building some Roblox community with like super advanced tooling.
Yeah, and I think as we grow, it's actually in my mind, no code for the current generation is even like a bit maybe even too hard, or just mindset is different, and it's really like in 5-10 years, what we're gonna probably see is more of this newer generation is already living in those tools, right? They are living in this modern era. They already are building things from early age, and it's kind of the norm for them to be used to these tools, and then of course they're going to have much higher expectations, but they are the real kind of generation that's really going to use no code and any other productivity tool in the future to build things for themselves and for their companies.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
So good for us.
It's good for us, for our kids, hopefully.
That too.
Totally. Well, Koen, thank you so much for joining me and for all of the
Thanks for
candid
having me.
conversation and the feedback. I really enjoyed it. Where can
Of course.
people learn more about you and Framer online?
Just go to framer.com and yeah, you'll see it's a fantastic website because
It is.
we
I
are
can
Framer and
confirm.
we made it in Framer and we basically change it every week because we can build websites
Yeah.
so ridiculously fast. But it's really it's cool. Like we have a great community where if you're thinking about building a site, but maybe you're not like if you are a professional web designer, or if you know like you're a professional but maybe not a web designer, but you need a website for your company, come hang out there. Like we can guide you how to build the best possible sites that you can have. If you want to learn more about me, I'm easy to find on the internet. But yeah, follow me on Twitter or something like that. But
You
go
have
to
a
Framer
website.
first.
You
I
said
have
it
a
loud,
website.
make it.
Yes.
You should build it with Framer.
It is, of course.
It
Yeah,
is
can't get
okay.
away with something else. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Quinn, for joining me.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye.